Hello, my name is Hakon and welcome back to my channel and a little video about books today and specifically about Roald Dahl. Um, and just to get it out of the way, Roald Dahl's mother was Norwegian, his father was Norwegian, and um, he spent his summers in Norway. He spoke Norwegian, but as far as I know, being Norwegian myself, no Norwegian has ever tried to take credit for Roald Dahl. And that is because his writing, perhaps, is so completely English that you can't think of him as a Norwegian writer in any way, shape, or form. And to people in Norway, he is an English writer or a British writer. British is probably more correct because he was born in Wales. He did spend many of his formative years in England, prep school, Weston-super-Mare, etc., which I suppose makes him a little bit more English. But of course, the way he writes is just so quintessentially English, I think, to a Norwegian that we think of him as English. So that's the thing. So he's got a Norwegian name, Norwegian parents, and he is British. Now, these days, when you hear about Roald Dahl, most of the time you hear about the children's books, and he's written loads of them. You could say that's his main body of work. But interestingly, when I was growing up, in the 70s, the late 70s, and in the 80s, his children's books weren't a big part of the cultural background noise for me in Norway. It might have been different if you were in Britain, but in Norway you didn't actually hear that much about his children's books. I was born 3 years after Gene Wilder's Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory was a major film, but there wasn't much happening in the late 70s and early 80s to do with Roald Dahl's children's stories in Norway. And I'm not sure you even, I can't remember seeing them in the bookshops. Maybe you saw Matilda and the Willy Wonka or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but that was about it. So what was a big part of the cultural noise, not the background noise, but actually the foreground noise when I was growing up, on the other hand, was a little TV series that ran from 1979 to 1988, I believe, made by the BBC, which was Tales of the Unexpected. And this is what I knew Roald Dahl for, and this is what lots of people of my generation would have thought of when they thought of Roald Dahl, was short stories that had twists at the end, that were about the macabre, the sinister, and about murders. I think there might be some ghost stories in there somewhere as well. And there are two very iconic stories that perhaps everyone knows, like Lamb to the Slaughter and The Landlady. So these are things that are really big part of your cultural noise, your cultural background noise, if you grew up the same time as me in Norway. This is what I think of when I think of Roald Dahl. And it doesn't seem like that's a big part of what's being mentioned these days when people talk about him. It's the children's stories that get the press and the billing. So recently I wanted to expand my selection in my the bookshelf I have behind me a little bit, because I was running out of stories to read. Now it looks like I have a lot of stuff in my bookshelf, but there is non-fiction, there are documents, there's postage stamps even, and there are 3 shelves here of just of poetry. And the thing about poetry is, of course, you can't just read it from cover to cover and, oh, I finished that one and I'm going to read some other book. No. You have to sort of dip in and out of it, and you have to be in the right mood for it. I've got Shakespeare over here as well. You can't just read that willy-nilly. And of course, many other books that are novels or collections of short stories in my bookshelf I have already read. So I was starting to run out a little bit, and then I thought I should get some of Roald Dahl's short stories because I always enjoyed the way he writes. And we used to read some of it in secondary school, for instance. We read some excerpts from Boy, his sort of semi-autobiographical, or, well, he says it's not quite autobiographical, but it's it's autobiographical. Um, and so I was wondering what's available. So there are single volume books published of Roald Dahl short stories, but I found something really, really convenient, because the thing is, when you read books, a big book, a big bulky book, is not easy to bring along, and it can be a bit heavy in the hand, etc. So I found out his short stories have actually been published in this absolutely brilliant 8-volume set, which also includes the Boy, his autobiography, which reads more like a sort of a novella, I suppose, or a short novel. And otherwise, this is his short stories organized thematically. So this is all the grown-up stuff, and you can sort of see from the titles here, it sort of tells you a little bit about what kind of themes he wrote about in his short stories. There's cruelty, deception, lust, madness, trickery, fear, war, and then of course innocence, which also has a boy in it. And this is such a brilliant set that I thought I'd just make a little video about it, because others might not know about this. So if you want to read some really quality short stories by one of the masters of the craft, Roald Dahl, not just children's stories, then this is a set I can recommend. And you can get the whole set. I think the recommended retail price is around £30, but if you look around, if you shop around, you might find booksellers like on eBay, which I did, and that are selling it for £15-16, the whole set, new, not used, the whole set. That's what I paid for it. So, because the thing about short stories, especially the kind where you have that sort of twist in the tail, unexpected ending kind of story, is it's very hard to write, because every little thing you say is quite a short story. I mean, a short story doesn't have to be that short. If you look at Stephen King's short stories, many of them are, well, technically novellas. But the thing is, if you want to write a very condensed short story, every word counts, and you have to make sure it's exactly the right word in the right place. And I know that Roald Dahl, because I've seen, I think it was part of an introduction to Tales of the Unexpected, where he says that sometimes he spent weeks just trying to tweak a sentence just to make it just right, or because he wanted everything to be just so. And the thing is, when you have an unexpected ending of a short story, you should also have these little hints along the way to give the reader sort of little nuggets that they might sort of pick up, something they can pick up and sort of say, oh, yeah, of course, when they get to the ending, and sort of, yeah, of course, I should have realized because of, yeah. So there's little indications of what might be. So recommended reading. These ones. Oh, by the way, something that isn't done very often when you see pictures of books, etc. When you have to have a look inside. So these are very small paperbacks. This is about the smallest size you usually get. So it's a good fit for a hand. Even my small hands, you can see here, it's palm size. The writing is a good size. I can read these without reading glasses quite easily. And of course, you read through the pages quite quickly because there's not that much writing on each page, which I quite like. You sort of feel like you're progressing through it. It's quite good for your reading morale, if you need such a thing, to get going or keep going. Rather than having this big brick of a book with small type, and it feels like it's going to take forever to get through it, and sometimes it makes people stop reading. So yeah, Penguin Books, set of 8 books, Roald Dahl's short stories, including Boy, absolutely worth picking up if you're into your good short stories. So yeah, I think that's about what I wanted to say today, really. I'm sorry I'm dragging it out a little bit because I'm not very good at concise videos. It's not my style. I'm not as concise in my style as Roald Dahl is in his writing, I'm afraid. So, of course, by the time you finished watching this video, you might as well have read a whole short story of his, probably. So, there you go. Anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about today. I do have wanted to make a little bit more videos about books generally. Maybe I will every now and again. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.